First Contact with Joshua Pope.
Hello, Earthlings. How you doing today? Welcome back from the weekend. Today is the 9th day of October, 2017 on the Gregorian calendar. On the Jewish calendar, it is the year 5778. It is the 19th day of Tishri. It's the festival of Sukkot that is being celebrated, Sukkot, which again is the remembrance of the time that the Hebrews left Egypt and the exodus through the desert. And therefore these sukkahs, these temporary housing, was representative of the times and the places in which those people who were making the exodus had to live. It's also reminiscent of the idea of faith, because in order to move through the desert like they did for so many years and for such a period of time, they needed to be able to have some sort of faith that they were being guided, that their lives were going to be okay. So this is what this is a time of. So no matter what we're going through in the world, this is a good time to remember that God takes care of his own, and that if we simply remain vigilant to understanding what God is trying to say to us in our lives, then our lives will be made better for it. From an astrological standpoint, so we can look at the planets and the stars affecting us. We still see Libra. The sun is in Libra. It is at 16 degrees. So it's past the halfway point, going up to 30 degrees before we transition into the next sign. Our moon is over here in Gemini, an air sign. So we have Libra is an air sign, Gemini is an air sign, so a lot of air today. Gemini is all about communication. So the two aspects and two signs we're looking at, tarot related. First we have Libra, which is air, saying the words and the actions that help balance out our life without saying words and actions that affect and hurt our lives. And the Lovers, which is all about choices. Here we have the male and the female aspects of life, conscious and unconscious mind, looking to the higher self. Actually, the subconscious mind, the female, is looking to the higher self. The conscious mind is looking to the feminine aspect of ourselves, which is paying attention to the superconsciousness. And in that way, we're able to move through life in a balanced manner. Masculine, feminine, the higher self. Okay, it's a very easy, simple process to learn. We've just gotten to a point in society where there's a lot of confusion. Now, since gender is such an important issue when it comes to understanding the nature and how things work, it's easy to understand how in this day and age, when the idea of gender is so misconstrued and so divided into 50 some odd genders, we could see how there could be some confusion in how things operate, because the very nature of everything that we read is always about male and female. When you start getting to further breakdowns of that, well, then you've got a system that is running on its own ideologies. Today here in America, we are celebrating Christopher Columbus Day, though there are various groups who have included Indigenous Day as well, wanting to remember the indigenous people. The idea being that Christopher Columbus would not be who he is without the indigenous people. Well, I disagree with that. Christopher Columbus would be who he is without the indigenous people. It is the founding of America that would have been different without them. But I thought that's what Thanksgiving was about, celebrating the fact that we had Christopher Columbus, we had the Mayflower, the Pilgrims, we had the indigenous people of the land gathered together in celebration. So this seems to me to be just another one of these political maneuvers that is made by people in order to just make their own voices heard. Christopher Columbus was an Italian explorer, navigator, and colonizer. He was born in the Republic of Genoa under the auspices of the Catholic monarchs of Spain. He completed 4 voyages across the Atlantic Ocean. These voyages and his efforts to establish settlements on the island of Hispaniola initiated the permanent European colonization of the New World. At a time when European kingdoms were beginning to establish new trade routes and colonies, motivated by imperialism and economic competition, Columbus proposed to reach the East Indies, the South and Southeast Asia, by sailing westward. He eventually received the support of the Spanish crown, which saw a chance to enter the spice trade with Asia through this new route. During his first voyage in 1492, he reached the New World instead of arriving in Japan as he had intended, landing on an island in the Bahamas archipelago that he named San Salvador. Over the course of 3 more voyages, he visited the Greater and Lesser Antilles, as well as the Caribbean coast of Venezuela and Central America, claiming all of it for the Crown of Castile. Columbus is a European explorer credited with establishing and documenting routes to the Americas, though he was preceded by the Viking expedition led by Leif Erikson in the 11th century. Moreover, the voyages of Christopher Columbus led to the first lasting European contact with the Americans, inaugurating a period of exploration, conquest, and colonization that lasted several centuries. These voyages thus had an enormous effect on the historical development of the modern Western world. Columbus spearheaded the transatlantic slave trade and has been accused by several historians of initiating the genocide of the Hispaniola natives. Columbus himself saw his accomplishments primarily in the light of spreading the Christian religion. Okay, so there's a little bit about Christopher Columbus as we remember today the great explorers that came before us that really allowed us the opportunity in life to experience much more than what we've experienced. And America has turned out to be really an awesome place that has evolved. I'm sure that if Christopher Columbus had a chance to look and see what has become of his finding, how it has led to more findings and so on, I'm sure he might be quite pleased. Now, America is quite the country indeed. We've had our ups, we've had our downs, but here we are. We are still one of the greatest nations on the earth in the freedoms that we allow the citizens here, in the opportunities that we allow the citizens here. And because of that, America keeps shining its light. That is why so many people want to come to America. Okay, they don't come to America because America is a bad place. They come to America because we have so much to offer. All right, let's switch gears to one of the stories that has certainly been in the news cycle last week and will continue to dominate some of the news cycle again this week. And this is the story of the Las Vegas shooting. Stephen Paddock told you the theory that is being looked at, that he's an undercover agent working with the FBI, that this was a really bad deal that ended up working out in a very bad way, resulted in Stephen Paddock being shot, most likely before the murders of all of these people took place, before the shooting took place, and now we are left with this trail that is being uncovered. Here is a story, very interesting story. Key witness in the Las Vegas shooting kills self and daughter following the FBI raid. Key witness in the Las Vegas shooting massacre has killed himself and his disabled daughter in a horrific murder-suicide shortly after the FBI raided his home. John Bellman was wanted for questioning by federal agents in connection with a communications device discovered in suspected shooter Stephen Paddock's hotel room. Investigators searched Bellman's Fairport home the day before he shot his severely disabled daughter and himself, according to sources close to the investigation. Agents executed a search warrant and raided Bellman's Williamsburg Drive home the day before he took his daughter Nicole to the backyard, shot her and himself in the back of the head with a 12-gauge shotgun. John Bellman's 27-year-old daughter Nicole had Rett syndrome, a rare neurological disorder. Nicole Bellman relied upon a wheelchair and was dependent upon her parents for care. According to the report, upon the FBI searching the Mandalay Bay hotel room used by CIA gunrunner Stephen Paddock, a cell phone charger was discovered that had no accompanying phone, with SRV technology experts noting that this type of charger is used to charge a CP502520 3.0 volt 600 mAh LIN non-rechargeable thin cell battery. These are the kind used in various communications by U.S. Special Forces and CIA forces. The company making the unique lithium battery this report details is Ultralife Corporation, based in Newark, New York, that specializes in military communication systems for the Pentagon, and whose lead engineer for this particular communication system was developed by John Beelman. Okay, so we have now in the room was found a communication device used by the military or special forces or alphabet agencies. Either way, it's just not the common everyday guy. And the man who is responsible killed himself. Obviously, the plot thickens. Obviously, there's much more to the story than we are being told. So do not buy into the lie that the media is going to try to sell you all day and all night. They're trying to peddle this lie because the FBI, the CIA were caught with their pants down. And in the process of doing what they did, a lot of Americans have been hurt. Excuse me. So there you have it. All right, let's move on to our next story here that is certainly making its way through the news cycle. This is the big story about Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein. Weinstein Company's board of directors fired co-chairman Harvey Weinstein from the independent movie and television studio on Sunday, citing allegations of sexual misconduct by one of the highest profile producers in Hollywood. In multiple conversations over the past few days, board members had been furious, not just about revelations about Mr. Weinstein's previously undisclosed financial statements with women who accused him of sexual harassment, but his public attempts to defend himself, according to a person with knowledge of the board's deliberations. Board members had hoped Mr. Weinstein would resign before they decided to fire him, and concluded with the attorney that they had the grounds to do so, this person said. Mr. Weinstein on Friday began an indefinite leave of absence. In a brief statement, the board, which cites Harvey's brother Bob, the company's co-chairman, cited new information about misconduct by Harvey Weinstein that has emerged in the past few days. A spokesman for the Weinstein Company board members didn't immediately return a request for comment, and a representative for Harvey Weinstein couldn't immediately be reached for comment either. The independent studio run by Bob Weinstein and its president, David Glassier, though they have a long-held senior relationships role, Weinstein Company and predecessor studio Miramax in many ways have been inseparable from Harvey Weinstein's larger-than-life personality and his deep talent relationships. In the years leading up to a New York Times article last week about Harvey Weinstein's alleged sexual misconduct stretching nearly 3 decades, tensions at the studio have routinely left Hollywood insiders wondering about Weinstein Company's future health. In a statement to the Times, Mr. Weinstein said he apologized about how he has behaved with colleagues in the past and said he was working with therapists on how to deal with this issue head on. Well, there's a big pedophile problem in Hollywood. I've been telling you about this for a while and pointing out the stories that have been talking about this issue for a while. And here we see a major Hollywood figure now, major Hollywood figure. This man, Harvey Weinstein, who's been accused of the sexual misconduct, has been seen in photographs with many Hollywood celebrities. The strange coincidence is when we look at all of the celebrities that have spoken out negatively about Donald Trump over this last year, we can find pictures of all of those celebrities with Harvey Weinstein. It seems to be a strange coincidence, one after another, almost as if there was an agenda they were trying to protect. It's very weird. Very weird indeed. Here's another story. Harvey Weinstein's media enablers. The New York Times is one of them. This paper had a story on the mogul's sexual misconduct back in 2004, but gutted it under pressure. 2004, that means in 2017, which is now, that means there's 13 years ago, the New York Times knew about this. 13 years ago. A whole lot of fur has been flying since last Thursday when the New York Times published a game-changing investigative story about Harvey Weinstein's sexual misconduct that at lingering speed brought the mogul to his knees. He apologized, took immediate leave of absence from the company he's co-founded. That wasn't enough. His board members and legal advisors have been resigning en masse. And as new ugly details emerge in the 3 decades of settlements for sex-related offenses, he's quickly becoming a national pariah. I applaud the New York Times and writers Joni Cantor and Megan Towie for getting this story in print. I'm sure it was a long, difficult road. But I simply gagged when I read Jim Rutenberg's sanctimonious piece on Saturday about the media enablers who kept this story from the public for decades. Until now, he puffed, no journalistic outfit has been able to, or perhaps willing to, nail the details and hit publish. That's right, Jim, no one, including the New York Times. In 2004, I was still a fairly new reporter at the New York Times when I got the green light to go into oft-repeated allegations of sexual misconduct by Weinstein. It was believed that many occurred in Europe during festivals and other business trips there. At the time, he denied that he was on the payroll to help Mr. Weinstein with favors. From the story reached in Italy, Mr. Lombardo declined to comment on the circumstances of leaving Miramax or Rucci, saying they were legal matters being handled by lawyers. I'm very proud of what we achieved at Miramax here in Italy. He said of his work for the film company, it cannot be that they hired me because I'm a friend. I also tracked down a woman in London who'd been paid off after an unwanted sexual encounter with Weinstein. She was terrified to speak because of her non-disclosure agreement, but at least we have evidence of a payoff. The story I reported never ran. After intense pressure from Weinstein, which included having Matt Damon and Russell Crowe call me directly to vouch for Lombardo, and unknown discussions well above my head at the Times, the story was gutted. I was told that Weinstein had just visited the newsroom in person to make his displeasure known. I knew he was a major advertiser in the Times and that he was a powerful person overall. But I had the facts, and this was the Times, right? Wrong. The story, stripped of any reference to sexual favors or coercion and buried in the Inside of Culture section, an obscure story about Miramax firing an Italian executive. Who cared? The Times then culture editor John Landman, now an editor-at-large from Bloomberg, thought the story was unimportant, asking me why it mattered. He's not a publicly elected official, he told me. I explained to no avail that a public company would certainly have a problem with the producer on a payroll for hundreds of thousands of dollars. At the time, Disney told me they had no idea Lombardo existed. A spokeswoman for the Times had no comment on Sunday. I was devastated after traveling to 2 countries and overcoming immense challenges to confirm at least part of the story that wound up happening last week. More than a decade later, I had met a person with a woman who said she had been paid off for an unwanted sexual encounter and thus proved she existed. Well, this means New York Times knew 13 years ago that Harvey Weinstein was a predator. But yet they decided to bury the story because of who he is in the business. And now here we have Matt Damon and Russell Crowe were covering for these predators. You see how it works? All the same characters who are out there complaining about President Trump are the same ones who are out there catering to this sexual predator. Same ones. Here we have one that's kind of crazy. This old quote from anti-Trump Meryl Streep praising Harvey Weinstein, one of the sickest yet. We all know how much Meryl Streep hates Donald Trump. Remember this? Meryl Streep on Trump. When the powerful use their position to bully others, we all lose, unless he's a lib and most powerful person in Hollywood. There she is with the old sexual predator himself. Well, here she is at the 2012 Golden Globes calling Harvey Weinstein her god. I just want to thank her god, Harvey Weinstein. It's at the Golden Globes. Okay, and then we go down here, and here's the whole Roman Polanski. She's up giving a standing ovation to Roman Polanski. He was definitely a predator. Definitely a predator. Child predator, wasn't he? Okay, so, and then look who this is, Michael Moore. Michael Moore calls him being good friends. Well, let's see. He is a sexual predator, and he is a good friend of a sexual predator. Does that possibly make him? Huh. Guilt by association, perhaps? You could see what we're dealing with here, folks. We're dealing with a bunch of despicable individuals who are pointing their fingers elsewise at other people as if they are to blame for the problems when they themselves are involved with the very problems. Now, Meryl Streep, as you saw, was protecting her friend, making sure that she let people know what a great person this Harvey Weinstein is. But uh-oh, something changed. Meryl Streep slams Harvey Weinstein amid disgraceful sexual harassment allegations. Oh no, say it isn't so. Meryl Streep is speaking out against mega producer Harvey Weinstein amid allegations of sexual harassment against him. The actress released a linked statement to HuffPost 4 days after the New York Times published an explosive report outlining Weinstein's alleged history of sexual misconduct with women in Hollywood, including major names like Ashley Judd and Rose McGowan. The disgraceful news about Harvey Weinstein has appalled those of us whose work he championed and those whose good and worthy causes he supported. The statement read, "The intrepid women who raised their voices to expose this abuse are our heroes." Streep went on to explain that the one thing can be clarified when it comes to the claims, which were widely understood to be known secretly in the industry. Not everybody knew, the three-time Oscar winner said. Harvey supported the work fiercely, was exasperatingly but respectful with me in our working relationship and with many others with whom he worked professionally. She went on to say, I didn't know about these other offenses. I did not know about his financial settlements with actresses and colleagues. I did not know about his having meetings in his hotel rooms, his bathroom, or inappropriate coercive acts. And if anybody knew, well, I don't believe that all this investigative reporters in the industry and the hard news media would have neglected for decades to write about it. Streep and Weinstein worked together on multiple projects throughout the years, including The Iron Lady, which won her the most recent Academy Awards, as well as her August Osage County, which also earned her Oscar nomination. This behavior is inexcusable, but the abuse of power familiar, she concluded. Each brave voice that is raised, heard, and credited by our watchdog media will ultimately change the game. Hey, Meryl, what took you so long? I'm sure you knew nothing about this, right? All these years of working with Harvey, she knew nothing about it. Mm-hmm. Yep. Sure she didn't. Sure she didn't. They all knew. They are all covering their butts right now. Now, why is this important? The whole Harvey Weinstein thing. Well, let's look at who else is out there throwing some support for him. Down in Brazil, the Weinstein Company has taken the lead against sexual harassment and assault. Well, she's trying to claim what, because they got rid of him? You think they didn't know about this before? Huh. Very bizarre that she would think that. Oh, look, there's Michelle Obama with Harvey Weinstein. And look, there's Whoopi Goldberg. These people all hate Donald Trump. Whoopi's always making up racist comments and saying all kind of nonsense that is trying to incite problems. And Michelle Obama, well, she let her daughters stay with this man. What does that say about her and the family, that they let this man, the sexual predator, around their children? And then, of course, we've got, oh, look at this. There's Barack, buddy with Harvey. And here's good old Chuck Schumer. And we can go on, and we can find all kind of pictures with Harvey. We got every one of the actresses from Jennifer Lawrence to, Lindsay Lohan to Ashley Judd. You can go on and on. The Disney kids, you see them all with Harvey Weinstein. And in many of these pictures, you see the looks on these young women's faces. Some of them, they look almost terrified because of what they're about to go through with this man or what they may have gone through. But nonetheless, they've remained silent because they did the deed behind a closed door. They shut their mouths, and now they have a career. And that seems to be what's going on. But we've heard of the stories about the pedophilia in Hollywood. We see that President Trump is working to clean this up. When he first got in office, the first executive order he signed after Jeff Sessions became Attorney General was about human trafficking. Here we have a situation in Hollywood that's been talked about for a long while. It's coming to light. It's coming to light because cowards in Hollywood are finally willing to speak up about this bad behavior that's been going on. But if this story hadn't come out by the New York Times, would we be hearing from some of these Hollywood people? Probably not. They would keep their secret with them as long as they could. But the cat's out of the bag. We understand that they are not very, very good people. They're protecting pedophiles, and they're getting caught. And since so many of these Hollywood types are involved with this despicable hate behavior, it's easy to understand why they are the same ones who are upset with President Trump, because he's wanting to clean up that behavior, to stop that behavior, and those people they don't want to stop because they have been corrupted. One more story here. This is George Soros. Article says, who's funding the anti-Trump resistance? The money trail leads back to Soros. Surprise, surprise. The Washington Free Beacon broke the story revealing the donations of the anti-Trump resistance. The donation list is revealing a number of levels. It shows the extensive spiderweb interconnectivity of the network of leftist radicals and organizations, and it shows how they ensnare major corporations into financially supporting their radical anti-American aims. The list includes the usual suspects like George Soros and some suspects new to the political activist realm, namely the NFL Players Union, who were happy to join Soros in his latest AstroTurf efforts, manufacturing the appearance of widespread anti-Trump resistance. Okay, so it's a long article. I'm going to leave this for you to read, but we're not surprised the George Soros name comes up. Who's George Soros connected to also? Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Who's Hillary Clinton connected to? Harvey Weinstein. Who's Harvey Weinstein connected to? All of these Hollywood actresses and actors that are out speaking against Trump. You see the vicious cycle of vile evilness that is there? These people who are doing despicable things, who probably have been compromised because they've been photographed doing despicable things, well, they're so willing to be able to go out and support a person like George Soros, while at the same time wanting to discredit somebody like Donald Trump by accusing him of doing the things that they themselves are doing. Donald Trump's not racist, but he's accused by those who actually are racist of being racist. All the same despicable people that are doing the dirty deeds are trying to blame President Trump. It's a very bizarre scenario, my friends, but that is what is happening. So what can we do? What can we do? We've got all of this craziness, this darkness going on in the world. The best thing that we can do is to continue to turn our attention to God. Remember this? This tells us that our unconscious mind, the female, that part of ourselves that receives from the universe, needs to be focused on the higher self, not the lower self, the higher self. And as we're focused on the higher self, then our conscious mind, when it's looking, we look towards that part of ourselves that is looking at the higher self, and we reach for a higher plateau. We reach for a higher way of doing things, a better way of doing things that isn't going to hurt ourselves or hurt others. So it's very important each and every day that we connect in. Let's take a moment. Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother, we pray this moment, this day, that we are able to allow more and more of the goodness of the universe to enter into our lives, that we are able to siphon out of our lives all of those things that are causing harm, confusion, or distraction within ourselves, that we may move through this world being beacons and examples of love, positivity, and goodness for the world, and that through this light and this goodness that we shine, that we may help expose the darkness so that the world becomes cleansed each and every day of the problems and filled with more and more of the goodness. In Jesus' name, amen.
60 seconds.
So my friends, let's go into the world today. Let's just keep doing good. Let's just put out good. We know that there's bad things happening. They're going to keep happening as long as there's bad people out there. But the good news is that we have an opportunity to change things, because there's more goodness in the world than there is bad. We just have allowed the bad to have a bigger voice. Well, it's time for that to change. We just need to keep putting out the positivity, putting out the goodness, putting out the love. Eventually, that will win over, and we will have the world that we really want to have. It's not all that difficult. Remember, you have to be like a little child to enter the kingdom of heaven. Little child is innocent, filled with love, just wanting to be a bright light in the
10
world.
seconds.
That's it for today, my friends. I'll be back tomorrow. I love you. Keep loving each other, and I will talk to you soon. Peace. I'm out of here.